Welcome to Upturn, the podcast where we go beyond discussing success and delve into stories that are rarely talked about.
We share honest stories about failing, hitting low points, and most importantly, a turning point when someone decides, this is it, no more BS. I'm getting my life back on track now.
So get inspired by authentic voices who choose to climb back up when life knocked them down. This is your place for honest conversations, recognition, and powerful upturns. Let's rise together.
Hello and welcome to this next episode of the Upturn podcast. I'm your host, you can call me Steph, and I'm here with Kathryne Imabayashi. I'm so sorry. Did I pronounce that right?
That was perfect.
So can you tell us a little bit about it? Because you are one of the authors in Upturn and you wrote a beautiful piece that I read, but maybe you can introduce yourself to the audience.
I'm a retired Canadian educator. I've lived in Japan for almost as long as I lived in Canada. And then we lived in, I think, 6 other countries and cultures as in between our time in Japan. I retired 4 years, it'll be 5 years this summer. And that's when I decided I wanted to put all of my energy into what my real passion was. And that's all connected around the inner emotional world of boys.
Before we dive into it, I read the piece and I think it's really important what you're doing. But why are boys so important for you?
Initially, because I have a son and he's the most important person in my world. Next, it would be that the next important person is my husband. And I'm surrounded by, beautiful males. They're half the population. I've spent more than 4 decades in the classroom and in administration. So boys are part of that environment. In administration, I had more contact with little boys because they would get sent to the principal's office much more often than the little girls. So they're just, I resonate. I feel for them. I have a lot of compassion for challenges and gifts that they have.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is very much tied into your Upturn. The moment things changed for you. Can you tell us a little bit about that to help people understand what the main issue is and why boys need more support at this point?
When it all changed for me, it was, and I mentioned this in the Upturn story, it was when I was taking my son fishing and just the two of us, and he was around 3 or 4, and it was in Japan, very safe. I had no concerns about anything negative happening to us. The place that we went, the little river that we went, was a little bit off the main road and down a tree-lined pathway. It was beautiful. So we went down there, started the day, just the two of us, and I saw out of the corner of my eye what I instinctively thought of as a gang of boys. And in that moment, I was filled with fear. And that fear was connected with there's a gang of boys coming down, and how am I going to protect my little boy and myself? There was no thinking to it. It was an automatic guttural reaction. So the boys came down, and there were 5 or 6 of them, and they were at that age just before starting middle school, that summer in between. And I actually had been teaching that age group the year before. So even more than someone else, I should have recognized this was a period of development where their bodies were growing like wildfire, but inside they very much were beautiful little boys still. And we had a beautiful time together, and it was it was a lovely afternoon. They were great with my little boy. He was in heaven with the big boys, and that could have been it. And my life would have turned out differently. But what happened is that my personality is very I analyze things to death. It's been noted as a bit of a flaw of mine. And that night after our son went to bed and I was kind of sitting there by myself, it was just really bothering me, trying to understand why did I react that way, because it didn't make any sense. I had no tragedy or trauma or experience that would have triggered me to have that reaction. So I could not find any reason, and it was really bothering me because I liked things to make sense. And just when I was about to give up, at least for the night, I had an image in my head, and it was that my little boy is 3 or 4 now. So in 10 years, or 15 years, or 20 years, is there going to be another mom who is totally filled with fear simply because he's a boy, not because of what he's doing or saying or wearing, and that just broke my heart. And it was like, okay, something is wrong with this picture. If this is the world that we're living in, that he's growing up in, there's something wrong. And I need to understand it so that I can try and make the world a better place for him. And then that goes out to making it a better world for everybody.
Yeah, as a boy mom, I feel that. I absolutely feel that. It's my boy is turning 3 next week. And
Mm.
so it's in the same age group as you're describing. And to think that someone would feel threatened by him just because he's a boy, that's really heartbreaking. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And there's no real, I mean, it shouldn't be that way.
No, and I can also see why it grew that way. Um, but I think as especially as boys parents, we do have a responsibility to make it a great next generation.
I agree. That's my
Yeah.
work.
Yes, yes, I know. I read a bit of your book, and it's beautiful. And you also mentioned in your book about boys will be boys, and how boys are different in the classroom. And you just mentioned that a little bit as well. What's the main difference you see between boys and girls in that respect?
I think that's one of the greatest challenges that boys have, and especially, in those younger years, kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, those are really challenging times, and even more so today than it was, 20 years ago, because academics are getting pushed down further and further and further. The system is basically geared for how a female learns. Little girls love to go to school and sit and draw and read, and um, they go home and they play school. Like they love it. It's an environment that they are finding success and thriving in. And most or many of the teachers in those early years, lower elementary, are female. So they kind of understand that system
Yeah,
as well. And then you get these high energy, full on, you know,
feral
I'm,
creatures.
yes, I'm going to come in and I'm going to save the classroom and transport the children to another planet. And um, there is there is not the accommodation for that kind of learning for a little boy who needs to be recognized for having great skill and power in, when he can use his hands, when he can solve problems, when he
Yeah,
can create things. Um, and instead, what happens is that spark that our little boys start school with soon starts to dim out.
yeah,
And many boys will start to feel like they're not good enough because they can't do it the same way the girls can. And the way the girls do it is the way that is recognized as being successful. So, in my opinion, it's actually doing damage to these
yeah,
little boys' sense of self. And the thing of it is that the educational system, I mean, it changes gradually but it is so slow.
Yes.
So for anybody who has, a boy, it's really important that as a parent, you understand what that little boy's day is like to begin with, and then to find ways to build up his sense of self-worth and self-esteem because he's losing that at school. I remember the first time watching, like at school, being a teacher and watching my son's kindergarten class when they were going out for recess. I mean, he couldn't see me because I was upstairs, but I was watching them. And it was like this, burst of energy, all the little boys in the room. As soon as the door was open for recess, they were out and like I watched, and it was for 20 minutes. It was only 20 minutes was the recess, which is another story. But for 20 minutes, those little guys are going like a typhoon. Like I
Yes.
couldn't make any sense. It was like I don't see any rules in this game. I don't see anything, but they are just having so much
Yeah.
fun running and running and running. And then you see them when the bell goes and they have to go back in. It's like, it's disheartening because it needn't be that way. There should be ways that little boys can, tap into their natural energy and enthusiasm and be recognized as successful as the little girls are.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. They have so much energy, even at 3 years old. I there's some days I just can't
Yes.
keep up.
Yeah. Yes.
I just open the door, and just out you go, and he just
We've
runs around.
we've watched some old home movies of when my son was between 2 and 3. And the first time I thought, oh, we don't have the setting right. Because it was like, it looked like he was on high speed, like,
Yes.
but no,
Yeah.
he wasn't.
Yeah, we have a sofa in the middle of our living room, and his favorite game is to either take his bike or run around in circles. And it just round and round he goes, and then the dog is running after him, and I'm just sitting there sipping my tea, like, you do you. I'm out. You do you.
Yeah,
But yeah, they
yeah.
have a lot of energy. And I think it's really, really sad if we tie it back to authenticity, which is the theme of the next Upturn book, is that actually the way the system works it just crushes their own authenticity.
Yes, because if they try to be authentic, they're going to get in trouble.
Yes. I mean,
So,
we have these discussions at home where we like, well, there are certain situations where certain things are not preferable. Like it's not great when you're really about to go in your car and you jump in a puddle and you need a whole outfit change. It's like, well, maybe not right now, but there needs to be a way where you can really honor their authenticity. What
well,
do you
when you
think?
see,
Sorry,
sorry, go ahead.
right, you go ahead.
Well, when you see some adaptations and how, so I know that the last several years that I was in the classroom, we did a lot of project work. And that's when I saw these little boys just fly, like they were just so totally engaged and empowered. And so yeah, there are ways to accommodate their style of learning that would make it a better experience for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Their imagination is wild. I mean, even at almost 3 years old, the things he says, and there's not a day that goes by where I'm like, I'm sorry, what did you just say?
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
It's amazing and it's wild. So how did this change for you? So when you started learning more about this, about boys, about what they're going through, and implementing it into your work?
Mm, I think the first thing was just as I started to learn more, it's kind of like it's kind of like if you say something like, don't think of that purple elephant, you see that purple elephant everywhere. and that's foremost in your mind. So that became foremost in my mind, and I was seeing it everywhere. And as I started to learn some strategies, improving my style of communication, I just saw great results with the adult men in my life. So I guess that's the biggest thing. It was first understanding what the differences are, and and then being able to be compassionate and empathize with them so that your bond is deeper still.
Absolutely. I got a little bit of brain fart here. Sorry, it's really early. I woke up this morning by a ninja. So I was just, he didn't get out of bed for a long time. He would just wake up and call, "Can I get out of bed?" And then we would wake up and we're like, "Yeah, sure." And since this morning, he started getting out of bed without asking. So I was sleeping and I just felt this really tiny tuck on my duvet cover. And I opened my eyes and I saw, and I was just
That's
like up to the
beautiful.
ceiling. It was beautiful,
Yeah.
but it's like, "Oh, hello. Yes, you're here. Okay, come in for a cuddle." Yeah,
Yeah.
it was amazing.
That purity, that, joy, that everything that you get from your son, that's
Yes.
what needs to be cherished and protected. And there's, even just as you become more aware, even for your son to be able to hear from you when, he comes home in grade 1 or grade 2 and he's upset because of whatever, when his mom or dad can say to him, "Listen, I understand. And, it's a shame that you had to go through that. And I wish it wasn't that way, but it's not about you. It's the system." So
Yeah.
that you can counter a little bit of what's going on outside of the home. The home is the most powerful place.
Yes, and absolutely give space for their emotions as well. I think not
Yeah.
telling them not boys don't cry. I think that's the biggest BS ever said.
Yeah, it very definitely is.
It makes me really angry, actually. I mean, I've had
Well, it
boys and
should.
men that say I can't cry because I'm a boy. And it's like, well, if you're upset, you're upset. You still feel things.
Yeah, there's a whole chain of events that have, supported that idea that men shouldn't cry. And then there's, in the last, I don't know how many years, there's kind of like, oh yes, you can cry, but as soon as a man cries, then usually there's a little bit of, you know,
Yeah.
shock that they are crying. So then they're again shamed for it's quite complicated. And
Yeah.
the reason it gets so complicated is that we don't recognize enough the differences, and just, not one is not better than another, but both males and females are different.
Yes. Yeah, I can see that. They process emotions differently. And I think I'm from an in-between generation. So I'm in that generation where it started to be more okay that boys have feelings,
Hmm.
but there was still this very firmness um, about boys displaying emotions and that they needed to sit down and be still. And I think the whole time we're talking, I'm also thinking about, well, if the system is made for females, for little girls, if you look at the age of business that we're in right now, especially my generation, it seems that that's more geared towards men. So somewhere there's been a kind of a flip. Do you know what I mean?
What do you mean? No.
Well, if you look at the business world, it's very geared towards females need to be molded into a man's world, where in school the boys need to be into the girls' world. Does
Oh,
that
I see. I
so there's
see.
somewhere there's a flip which kind of, I think, if especially for both girls and boys, I think you're sort of used to the game and then somehow you turn into adult and the whole world flips. That must be really confusing for everyone,
Yes.
especially for boys as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I know when some of the first research that started to come out about boys was, and the first person that I read was Dr. William Pollack out of Harvard, and he he had started some research based as a result of one of the first mass shootings in a school campus in the States. And that seemed to be like a trigger to try to understand how did we get to that point? And then
Yeah.
like going backwards and trying to see, how many times did that and I'm not thinking about any one person or anything, but in general, every single time that that little boy understands that what they're doing is not what society accepts or not what his parents accept, whether it's not crying, not showing emotion, every time that that happens, he has to push that down and
Yeah.
not show that because he wants to be accepted by the community or his family. And if that gets repressed
Yeah.
over and over and over again, based on whatever trigger situations, but it can cause an explosive
Yeah.
reaction.
It just comes out, and then it's the only way they probably know how to deal with it is that way.
Well, and then you're looking at the exact opposite of being authentic, being able
Yes.
to be who you are and be accepted for who you are, flaws and frills, everything.
Yeah, it's kind of a survival mechanism that gets triggered in a
Yes,
way.
very much so.
It's fight mode in full force.
Yeah.
So what can we as parents do to make sure that it doesn't get to that point and that boys feel seen and that they can be authentically themselves?
The first thing is the hardest thing because it's, if you don't know what the problem is, then you're not looking for answers to anything. So if you don't really recognize that there is something more as far as your child, your little boy growing up, then you're not going to recognize what your unconscious gender biases are. If that day that we were fishing, if those boys hadn't come down, I thought I didn't have that kind of a bias. I thought I was very neutral as far as stereotyping. I didn't think I honestly did not think I had any of that. But that's the first thing, for people just to be curious and aware enough to have a look at that, take some of the quizzes or watch some of the research that shows people discovering these biases, and it'll trigger. It'll be like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I understand that. So that's the first thing, is to become aware that there even is something at work that is impacting how you are raising your child. And once you have that, once you're aware, then you have to learn everything you possibly can. There's a lot of information out there once you start looking for it. But if that's not on your, natural feed, it's not going to come up. So you
Yeah.
have to actively look and find information that helps you grow in your knowledge. And then the third thing is then you have to do something about it. Like how I started doing, like not just keeping it to myself, was because at the end of that first book by Real Boys, Dr. Pollock, at the very end, the last thing he said was, if you've gotten something out of this, if you've learned something about it, then now it's on you. Now it's your responsibility to share this with others. And I guess I must have taken that really seriously because that just started me and sharing it with anybody who would listen.
Yeah. Beautiful. So you have something to help people with that, to take the next step after hearing this and they think, well, I want to change this. I want to help little boys. What's the next step they can take?
So I have a free resource that will be included in the show notes, and it's called the 3-day challenge for parents of boys, plus a one bonus day. And in those 3 days, in the first day, you do discover some things about unconscious gender bias. On the second day, you understand a little bit more about the boy code and what the myths are that society, the messages that our boys are getting, and what you can do about that. And on the third day, I think it's looking at some of the actual differences, like in communication, in some physical differences with hormones. And then the bonus one was just because it's something near and dear to my heart. Although most of my work is connected with young boys, like up until elementary, I wanted to add something that had parents starting to think about rites of passage. Because again, a lot of our little boys don't have any recognition of when that transition between boyhood and moving into, young
Yeah.
manhood. Girls have it, that you
Yes.
know the moment that you have made that switch, and boys don't. And so that fourth bonus day is talking a bit about how to create your own rites of passage when your son is that age.
That's beautiful. I think that
Thank
would be really valuable for people. I think if I look at my little boy, I think we're doing really well, but then you still open my eyes for things that I'm like, oh yeah, I still have gender bias. And I think a lot of people do. I think there's almost no going around it that you grew up with gender bias. And I think it's really important for, especially if you look at the whole Me Too. If
Yeah,
we have a better environment for boys, then Me Too probably wouldn't have happened at the scale it did.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot that can be done. It's
Yeah,
just creating some kind of an awareness. Then you know where to go. Then you're looking for it.
yeah. And I think what you're doing is absolutely beautiful. And I think it will help a lot of men to become absolutely remarkable, because that's the title of your book as well. And
It is.
thank you so much for this interview. I'm really looking forward to reading more, to learning more, and myself see what I can do to make it a better place.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on here. Can I make a plug here that is kind
Absolutely.
of so I did start my own podcast last fall. And the first two seasons, what I called seasons, were interviewing parents. First season, second season, parents of boys. But I've just started the third season, and I think it's going to be something really special to listen to, because I'm talking to some experts, anything connected with male mental health. And I'm talking to fathers who are raising children, and I'm talking to young men. And my son was the first one, the first young man that I spoke to. And I think hearing those voices that are still young, they haven't started their own families yet, and they're talking about their school experiences. It has it has power to hear what they're saying. So yeah,
Oh, that's beautiful. We'll include that in the show notes as well for people if they want to keep on
thank
listening.
you.
And I
Thank
think
you.
that's what you're saying. I think it's really beautiful and really valuable. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
My pleasure completely.
So you just heard my amazing talk with Kathryne about boys, about how we as a society look to boys and her mission to change that. Yanni, you've been working with her for quite a while now. How
Yeah.
do you look at her mission?
Yeah, chills. The first time we met, she explained what her mission was, and she was already just grabbing me. But how the passion is speaking to her with her experience with her own son, and I'm a mom of two boys and a girl, so they're all older. But still, I was like, oh my goodness, I wish I had met you before, when I had the age that my children were a little bit younger, and if I even had known it from this perspective, um,
Yeah.
and that when you talk with her, she has so much knowledge, but so much heart also,
Oh yeah.
for the people that she's connecting with, but also for those children. Every time she was a teacher at school, she finished her working life and then still got back, because it's so, she cannot let go, and that's just, it's a way of living for her, and that speaks through everything she does, and I think that's so powerful for her.
Yes.
And I really, really hope and think people need to hear what her point of view is. With such little things, she can make such a change in somebody's life, uh, with the moms, the dads, the boys itself, boys who are growing up, becoming dads themselves.
It
It's
just has
just,
an amazing ripple effect. It's just
yeah,
not one boy's life or someone's output. It's just it's affecting everything.
yeah, exactly. And it is one boy at a time, but
Yes.
the effects are immense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So also when I every time I connect with Kathy, we're coming from a place like, oh, what can we do? We want to do more than we're already doing. And the longer the conversation is, the more we get at ease, and we recognize the spirituality behind it, the connection behind it, and what is also possible. Just one human touch, what can make the difference. And I love
Yeah.
it when I connect with her, I see her change. But that's exactly what she does also with the moms that she's talking with. Like,
Yeah.
such a wise woman who is there. Isn't that how it's used to be in generations? We are so,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, we're so disconnected from all our family generations. Like here in Europe, we are living in Holland, we do not go anymore to our grandmother and ask for her
Yeah.
wisdom. And she is exactly that person I would go to and say, "Hey, what do you know? What can you teach me? What those wisdom should be transferred through times." And that's exactly what she's doing. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love
and
that.
I think as a mom of boys, and we both have boys. Kathy has boys, had a boy, sorry. Um, I feel a lot of responsibility to make
Yeah,
sure that he grows up to be a well-balanced young man who can do what he wants to do and contribute in his own way, in a way that suits him. And I think we have a lot of negative feedback from media, from social
yeah,
media about what's
yeah,
happening to boys. And I think helping help to empower them is really important. So I
yeah.
think this has such a huge impact, not just on the boys' lives.
Yeah, yeah, I'm totally agree. And so the story that that she was telling by when she was sitting at the lake, every time I hear that story again, and I've read it so many times now, right? It gives me chills because it's so true. For me, I don't want to have a opinion when somebody approaches me, and still it is there. And
Yeah.
seeing a group of boys, since her story, I was noticing it consciously around me, and it is so true. But also, my boy is 20 years old now, and I watched him. He was with me with some friends, and I watched him walking on the festival that we were at, and they are having fun, and they were totally okay. There were nothing bad was happening there, but I saw people just making space because it was a group of boys who were a little bit loud and were so present, and I was like, oh, that's exactly
Yeah.
the 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 root response that we got. No, we need to change that. We really need to change that. And Kathy is making a movement. She started a movement, and it
Yes.
just deserves to grow.
Absolutely. So if you haven't read her story yet, if you haven't seen the book, haven't pre-ordered the book yet, please pre-order the book, buy the book if it's already out, because this story needs to be heard.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Upturn podcast.
Did we make you hungry for your own upturn in life? Check out the website in the show notes for your next step to create your own purpose-driven life.